Hey, welcome everybody. Today is Wednesday. I always have to look in the bottom of the computer because I don't know what day it is. Wednesday, February 8th, 2023. And I'm joined by a special guest today, Adam Willett. And I may be joined by another special guest, Pat Daly, soon, but hopefully Pat can join us. And we've been putting off this announcement for a few weeks, but now we're ready. But before I get into the announcement, I wanted to play a little video that I think will actually have something to say about, hey, there's Pat. Welcome, Pat.
Hello, how's it going?
Good. So I'm going to start by playing a little video, which I think might set the tone for the announcement. And I want to, I know people have asked me and written to me about, Tom, your sound is terrible and you don't do it right. And all this. And I totally agree. I mean, and I don't really know how to change it. And people tell me how to change it and it never works. And then this one, even to make it worse, says I can't format it so that you can see the whole screen. But I think you'll be able to see enough to get the hang of it. So let's just do it. And then we'll actually give you the announcement after that. So I'm going to share and find the video. And here we go. And again, I apologize for that it's small and the sound may not be great, but I think you'll be able to hear it and see it.
Words alone carry a lot of weight. But when the power of words is combined with the power of authority, you can get people to believe just about anything. Dr. Willman.
Doctor.
I have an honorary degree in pseudoepistemology from the University of Phoenix.
Oh.
I placed an ad online inviting participants to take part in an experiment. We try a little experiment?
Okay.
Yeah, I'm gonna make these people believe that this fake rubber prop is actually their real arm.
Seems unlikely.
This is a Fibonacci silk, but let me show you how it works. If I drape it like this, the gap is now gone between your shoulder and the rubber arm, and your brain kind of fills in the gap. It's called the Seinfeldian effect. Simultaneously, because you cannot see your real left arm, your brain disassociates that. That's called the Costanza effect. Wiggle the fingers on your right hand. Great. And now wiggle the fingers on your left hand. I'm going to attempt to establish a connection right now using bees. I'm just going to rub the feather along the fake arm and your real arm that you cannot see. Your brain starts to connect the fake arm sensations and make them real. Now, let's see how strong this connection is. Do you feel this?
Yes.
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 And that?
Yes.
And this.
Wow, that's cool.
Isn't that wild?
Yeah, it's very, because your hand is,
Yeah.
that's
The
weird.
brain
Yeah,
connects them.
that's interesting.
Let's just test how far that connection goes.
Okay.
The cold test. Now, on your right hand, do you feel that?
I do.
Cold.
Yes.
That's why I call it the cold test.
Genius.
When I place it over here, how does that feel?
Cold.
Keep in mind, there's no science happening here. Just the power of magic and the power of BS. Now, what do you feel?
Nothing.
You don't feel an ice cube resting on top of your hand?
No.
Let's try another experiment. I call this one the heat test. I'll be very gentle. I promise not to burn you.
Okay.
Just curious if you feel that. What did you feel?
A little bit of heat.
Tell me how this feels.
Ah!
Now, do you feel that?
No.
This?
No.
That?
Nope.
Hot. The pain test. For the pain test, I'm going to use this pointy needle. I'm curious. Do you feel that?
Yeah.
Isn't that wild?
Yeah.
What does feel like?
Yeah, I can feel it.
Is it okay if I prick your real hand?
Yeah.
No blood, like acupuncture. Do you feel that?
No,
Nothing.
nothing.
Do you feel that?
No,
How about that?
no,
Anything now?
no. Nothing.
Nothing?
Nothing.
Let's try something else. The hammer test.
Ow! Oh!
You're good.
Oh!
Don't worry.
Wow!
Look at your fingers. Your hand's okay, right? If you don't mind stepping into testing room 2, we're gonna collect a urine sample. I'm kidding. It's in testing room 1.
Oh.
You know what happens in number 2.
Oh, no.
All right. What does that have to do with anything? So, the announcement today, which we've been working on for months and fiddling with the last few weeks, is we are announcing that we are inaugurating an online initiative to set up the new biology clinic or initiative so that we can see people and try to participate in improving their lives and improving their health, starting virtually, starting online, and then hopefully adding more and more practitioners and more services, and maybe even getting into brick and mortar establishments, and really trying to move from complaining about. So why did I show that little clip? I think most people who are watching this actually have come to realize that their, quote, healthcare options at this point are to go to doctors of pseudo-epistemology. That's what you get. You go to magicians who believe all kinds of stuff and use interesting mind control techniques and stick pins in you and get you to believe that you have certain diagnoses and you have certain genetic conditions, and that you even, God forbid, are infected by a variant of a virus, and they implant that stuff into your whatever, your he says brain, I don't know if it's your brain, and amazingly, like these people, you end up believing it, and it actually changes the way your body responds, to the point where you can even stick a pin in people and for some reason they just don't feel it. And I think we decided that we don't want to go to people like that anymore, who believe in this kind of magic. Not that I have anything against magic, but not that kind of magic. And so, and I also just want to share a little bit about how I came to thinking this is important. And that is 45 years ago or so, when I was deciding to go to medical school. And one of the things I had done at the time was I had studied with Michio Kushi at the Macrobiotic Institute in Boston. And I was convinced that when I went to medical school that I was determined, let's say it like that. I was determined that I would know enough and essentially be enough that anybody who came to me, I could tell them what to do, and no matter what they had, they would be cured, fixed, healed, whatever. And I thought at the time, I'm early 20s, that all I had to do was tell them what to eat and all the problems would be fixed. And so I did that, and it turns out it didn't work. It just didn't work. Not that I don't think what you eat has a lot to do with your health, but it just didn't work. And so that set me on a path, which has now been for 45 or so years of, well, if that doesn't work, was that the wrong diet? Is it still about food, but not that food? So I had to change the food. Is it about what we think? Is it about what we move? Is it about how we feel about life? Is it about relationships? Is it about what's being sprayed in the air? Is it about anything? And I just went into it with an open mind, saying to myself two things. A, I don't really know, but there's a difference between me and most of the people listening. Is most of us, we don't know either. But I had a difference, which is I was a doctor, right? So every day, every week for the last 40 or so years, 20 to 50 people would come to me and say something like, Tom, I got lupus. I have rheumatoid arthritis. I'm in pain. My foot hurts. I had a heart attack or whatever. So I would have 20 or 50 or 100 people that. And unlike most people listening to this, I could say, all right, these 20 people with heart disease, why don't you eat right like this and move like this and think like this and take Strophanthus like this, and we're going to see what happens. Now, most of you don't have that opportunity because you have yourself and maybe a few friends and family, and you talk to them and you read stuff and you don't know whether to believe it or not. But I had that opportunity over the years, every single week for 40 years. And that taught me a lot about what works and what doesn't work. And then I could go backwards and say, well, if I know that this works, this helps people's lives, people get better when I do this, why does that work? And in doing so, I had to basically give up just about everything I had learned or everything I thought was true. I had to reevaluate even whether it's right to brush your teeth or whether genetics has anything to do with anything, even though a lot of people came and said they had a genetic disease, and on and on and on. And so then we come to the early COVID era. And because of a lot of things, I decided, okay, I've got a pretty good handle after all these years on what might be helping people and why, and a sort of framework for biology, which is totally new biology, has nothing to do with all the things I had learned. But then I also had the sense that I couldn't do this anymore. I didn't want to be a doctor anymore. And so I retired, and that was really helpful to me to have a space to learn, actually put all this information that I had experienced together into a kind of a new framework, which is what I'm calling the new biology. And that's what I've been exploring and talking about these last 3 years. And it's been actually really helpful for me to step away, to take my lifetime of experience and then put it into a new framework. And then I came to the point where, okay, so what am I going to do with this? Like, am I just going to drop dead? And I have a bunch of videos? Or is there some way to put this into essentially to retest it out now that there's a whole new way of seeing it and a whole new way of looking at this? Now we have to go back and test it. And along the way, I started talking to different practitioners, of which Adam is one. And, we could say that I was in the role of the mentor, but I think I was in the role of having a conversation with people who have done a lot of this work themselves. And that really helped me, and hopefully it helped them, to have a conversation about what's real. At some point then it comes to the realization that we need to do something about this. We need to give people an option besides pseudo-epistemology practitioners, both normal and health and so-called alternative practitioners. And then came the work of putting it into a framework and how are we going to fund it and what's the legal basis and what are we even going to call the relationship and what sort of people do we want to be part of this. And for me, it was very clear that the person who could carry this torch the best, as far as I could see, was Adam, who's going to introduce himself in a minute. And then I get to stay in the role of my primary interest is, does this work and what's true? And so we essentially evolved a kind of framework that Adam would be the person who actually talks to people, and we're going to explain a little bit about how that's going to work. And we get to talk. I get to hear about what happens. We can share stories and what happened. And that to me is one of the most exciting ventures that I've ever been part of. I also want to acknowledge that we have a friend who has graciously decided to invest in this to help get this off the ground. I'm not going to mention his name right now, but we are extremely grateful to his support so that we can start this path of getting people to give people an alternative, to build a system that's not the usual system. It's one thing to complain about that doesn't work and they're all pseudo-epistemology doctors and they're doing this. It's another thing for all of us to together to build the world that we want to see. That's what we're trying to do here. We need to build the world we want to see. It's enough of talking about the way the world should be. Let's build it, find out what works, find out what doesn't, add more people, just do it with an open mind and an open heart. And that's probably enough about me. And so that was really the framework. So today is the official launch of the new biology initiative, and all the details you can find on our website, and we'll be going over them. But today I wanted to introduce the first two people who are working in this. The first is Adam, and we'll hear from him, and then Pat, who does movement. And by the way, I've been working, myself and my wife, Linda, have been working with Pat for the past couple months now. And it's really amazing. I was going to say enjoyable, but I'm not sure if that's quite like, I don't really like pushing myself harder than I think I should, than I want to. But boy, does it help my posture and my back and my overall frame, and I can hang on a bar longer, and a lot of things are happening. I highly recommend it for anybody. And so with that over long-winded introduction, Adam, if you could introduce yourself first and just touch on the question, why would you want to be part of such an initiative? So.
Okay. Yeah, thanks, Tom. So yeah, I'm Adam Willett. I'm a traditionally trained MD by training. I think I'd prefer to kind of refer people to the podcast as far as kind of the story of my journey to here. I'm like Tom, I don't really like talking about myself a whole lot, but I kind of went into some details on how Tom and I connected and about my past and my training and that. That video you showed at first, Tom, it's a lot of people are probably thinking that's kind of nuts. That's crazy. And if you're one of those that's sitting out there that thinks that modern medicine and modern science that we have here, at least in our country, is the pinnacle of science and medicine, the news we're sharing with you is that that's how most science and medicine is founded on today. It's no different than that video. As crazy as it seems, if you have an open mind, like Tom said, you can't come to any other conclusion if you're a rational thinking person. And I mean, at a young age, if you do the work that Tom's done and others have put out there about what's gone on with COVID in the last 3 years, you can't come to any other conclusion, honestly, that, these things are fake. And so that's kind of the whole premise again, where we're starting is there is a reality to this natural world. There is a truth. There's one truth. And that's not to say there's many ways of living. There's many ways of getting to certain goals in life or achieving certain things. But the way this natural world works is there's a truth to it. And I think all it takes is an open heart. You need to be ready and open to receive the truth. And that's kind of as easy as it is. And so that's a real exciting part, is we're seeing a shift now from, and I want to also mention that, in modern medicine, most of the people I worked with many great people, very generous and well-intended people. But when you're working in a model that's, broken and its foundation is false, then you can't really achieve true healing. And so that's the whole shift here, is that we're moving away from something that is based on, a lot of these models are, at least with health, are something got me, this virus got me, this infection got me, this autoimmune disorder got me, this just genetic disease got me, this tumor, this growth got me. So all these things are things that are nothing to do with how we're thinking, how we're eating, how we're moving or not moving, and how we're living in general has nothing to do with how good we feel and how we're functioning. And it does. And again, there's many different levels of our health that we can look at, but there's certain foundations that have dramatic effects. And the biggest ones are of the mind and the heart, how we think and how we feel and how we move and how we eat. These have profound things, the very basic things that Pat, has brought a tremendous insight to movement and breath. They're such basic things that most of us never even think of, how we stand or walk and how we breathe, but they're very, very core and foundational. And if we don't have those right, then it's difficult to have a healthy existence. So that's really what we want to bring this truth of how the natural world works. When you look at how things are in life, and Tom's talked a lot about water, brought that to light, that water, when it's structured properly, it's a completely different substance than when it's not structured. So when something is structured properly, like water, it's miraculous. Its abilities and functions are really mind-boggling. And if it's not structured properly, then it doesn't function at all. And that's true through all nature and in our bodies. The different tissues that have different functions, when they are in proper order, then they function properly. And it was interesting. I was going back. I haven't had quite as much time as Tom off, but I've had a little bit of time here off, and it's served me very well. Been able to go back and just review things and look a little deeper, and looking at basic definitions. And I'm not looking on Google for the modern definition that's been tweaked, but looking back to definitions of the early 1800s. And when you look at the word health, it is defined by proper order and soundness of the body. And so what does that mean? Soundness is being whole or one. When you look at scriptures and ancient writings, they talk about something being sound. It's unbroken, it's whole, it's intact. And it also mentions specifically the body is in order, which is, I never heard that word once referred that way in medical school or science anywhere, that we need to have things in order or structured properly in order for it to function properly. So proper form leads to proper function. And that's what Pat is bringing a lot of to, is focusing on the form of our body, our movement, and that creates proper functioning. And the amazing part is it all ties in together. We talk about, again, how we're thinking can affect how healthy we are and how we move, but also all the systems. When we're moving properly, then the blood flow is proper and the fluids are flow is proper, and that's where energy flows through this fluid medium, our CSF around our brain and our spine, our lymph tissue, and our again our blood. Everything moves properly when we're doing things right. So it's the neat part is it's a lot simpler than science has made it to believe. Let it believe that you don't need to go to 20 years of schooling and still come out and be confused like Tom and I. And I don't, I'm not gonna. Maybe I'm a knucklehead, but I know most. Tom and I, we did do well in school. We learned well, learned what they want us to learn. So that wasn't the issue. It's just that it doesn't add up. When anything is not true, at some point there's going to be holes in it, and we've seen it for a long time, and now finally, in the last few years, it's really opened up, and that's the exciting part. It's a beautiful system in nature the creators made, and it's very simple, and that's what we're going to focus on. And so we're going to continue to provide general information to help everyone. The whole goal here is not to try to harbor any secret information. It's hope to share that with others so they can help themselves, help their family, help as many people as they can. And for those that need, individual help with themselves or family members, that's what we're going to try to do here. And it's obviously the system, even the system is much different. Like Tom said, we're not treating patients here. Patients, when you look at the definition, is someone that's passively receiving treatment to them. You're not an active. You have to put in again, and it shouldn't be scary that, oh, now I'm going to have to go and all I'm going to be eating is spinach, and these things that are put out there. It doesn't sound very enticing. It doesn't sound very like a good quality of life when you got to do something like that. That's kind of different realms of thought out there with diet, but it can be a very very good quality of life where you're actually getting more diversity of foods than you'd think, but getting them from the right source. Obviously, it's more based on the quality of everything, the quality of the food and quality of movement and all of that. So maybe that's enough for now.
Adam, you said something which really got my interest too, which I never thought of, that that one of the definitions of health is that you are, I've heard, sound mind and body. Now that's an interesting word because sound connotes a kind of sound, right? And sound is an energetic field of, we're told, some sort of sound waves, right? So it's an electromagnetic field that is a harmonious electromagnetic field. And then there's another interesting question. Is that the sound that you're exposed to, like from the world? Or is it the sound that your body makes? Or is it both? Now, that's why one of the people that, I shouldn't probably spill the beans, but that we're going to be talked to about bringing on is Eileen McCusick, because the new biology is about, we are literally formed out of electromagnetic fields, sound waves. Now, not just sound waves, but also light waves and probably thought waves and feeling waves. And by the way, I don't actually even know that they're waves. I've heard they're waves, but since I don't really believe anything anymore, I'm not sure. I just know that there's something real about sound, and that if I'm sounding properly, that feels good. And if I'm in the proper light, which I think is the sun, that feels better than if I'm under an LED, fluorescent light. And at least for me, in all the time in medicine, and maybe Adam, you could say that nobody said anything about what kind of sound are you emitting. I mean, we don't know how to there are people who can measure that. What kind of sound are you exposed to? What is the sound we're hearing in the world? Is it the true sound? Is it the harmony of the spheres? Or is it nonsense? You know, that's like, or scary stuff or fear or whatever. And nobody ever asked the question, does that affect whether you have rheumatoid arthritis? Now, I don't know that it does or it doesn't, although I have a strong suspicion that it does. And that there isn't even something called rheumatoid arthritis. There's an expression in your body, maybe through your water, of an inflammation, maybe to rearrange the sound that you're hearing or the light or the movement or, you know, and that's what we mean by the new biology. And that's what, you know, Adam and I have talked for these, you know, this year on. So how do you actually find that out with a person? You know, how do you hear about what their life is like and what they're experiencing? And then you actually have a sense of what the problem is and maybe how to fix it, or how to not fix it, but how a person can go about doing it in a better way so they don't experience that. All right, Pat, let's who are you a little bit, and why would you want to be part of something as goofy as anti-pseudo epistemology?
Well, for those who will get to know me, this is right up my alley. So this is as you guys have worked with me, I'll dive deep into it. I'll say, hello, my name is Patrick, and then just start ranting. I'll give you all the information I have and what I want to share, because I think it's super fascinating. But a little bit about me. I've been in the personal training world since I was 18 years old. I'm 31 now. So for me, the biggest thing, and you'll see in my interview as well, but I'll just quickly rehash, is you know, we were helping people following these guidelines and following the protocols that we were taught. But what was hard for me was when we would get people coming in and their doctors were like, hey, don't do this, don't do this, don't do this. And there's this sense of defeat you constantly felt with people. And it was going, I want to help you. I don't want to, this shouldn't be the case. And through my journey, I started realizing, you know, we're so focused on the mind or the body aspect and some of the mind aspect in training, but we never really dove into the spirit. And so because of that, I was like, well, what is the spirit? What is it? And I started looking into breath. And then, like everything else, it took me down a rabbit hole and realizing how important, you know, whether or not whatever your religious background is, the understanding of creator in this place and understanding the importance of the present moment and what it means to be present, and what that presence that we're looking for is in the breath. And as I was training people, I realized how many people weren't breathing and they were holding their breath, and all this panic kicked in. And it just took me down this path of wanting to, like you guys, understand things differently. And I started realizing when I had doctors like yourselves coming to me to train and having issues and not knowing what's going on with them, I was like, so you're an osteopath, but you don't know what's wrong. That's interesting. Like in regards to like, if they had bone issues, I was like, this is so fascinating. And it wasn't to negate everyone and what they've done. It was realizing, as you guys have made clear, and a lot of doctors, they go, we didn't learn about this stuff. And so I started just being like, there's something here where I could be of help. And it just took me learning from everywhere, learning from doctors, learning from alchemists, from gardeners, from astrologers, learning from watching nature, just trying to take and literally be present with everything and learn something from every situation. And it allowed me to get to this point where I realized the body is a perfect design. It is always healing. It is a mathematical, perfectly designed system, an order, as you said, and that order, that sound order, is moving through what I call the natural spirals, the mathematical golden ratio, everything else. And if we can understand that the body is perfectly designed that way, and a lot of us have lost that, and learning how to reconnect with that, we will start to see is that the body will be back in what we call flow or flow state, but also literal flow with the blood, interstitial fluid, as well as our spine, our cerebrospinal fluid. So that's just a quick breakdown. And that's why I want to bring that to everyone here in this clinic, because as I said, when I have doctors come in and asking me questions, not that it's like, oh, you're better, like I have all this stuff figured out. It's knowing it's just, I'm so curious and I'm so passionate about trying to know more, and having, whether people come in and have questions, things I've never heard of before, it allows us to start to start with a new slate of like, okay, what's going on? What are you experiencing? What does things feel like for you in the present moment? Because then it makes it very personal. We can start being like, oh, you're not just another symptom here. Oh, here's this for you. It's going, no, let's learn you. Let's know about you, the individual. And what's fascinating is when I do this with as many clients and as many people over the years, the amount of just internal growth people have on their own, not because of me, but because we're just asking those simple questions of going, what do you feel? How do you feel? Where do you feel? And it's so beautiful, especially having kids. I have a 3-year-old son. It's just, you're going to learn a lot when you just hear them go, why, how, why? And now I just continue to do the same thing. So, and I hope people who come through will ask and do the same thing, because it allows us to grow. It allows you all to hopefully get more connected to the self, capital S, the being. And yeah, I'm excited to bring what I can bring.
Yeah, and you know, all the details of I'm not a detail guy as far as the rules of the clinic, but basically from my understanding is there's a certain sign up, and then you actually have access to talking to Adam about whatever is happening, and that also you will then be able to be part of a class that Pat is teaching. And then if you choose to have individual sessions like my wife and I are having, that will also be, you'll have access to this. So all that is going to be part. And again, as time goes on, we're hoping to add other kinds of practitioners and other services. I also wanted to speak a little bit about what you said, Pat, because there's two things that really changed how I saw medicine. The one was over the years, and I'm sure like a lot of doctors, but maybe because I'm a little bit more of a public figure than some, I hear over and over again from people, and this is like a weird thing to say, but, oh, Dr. Cowan, you know, I saw you 20 years ago, 10 years ago, and you saved my life, you changed my life, right? I'm sure we've all heard that. And the interesting thing for me is sometimes I remember the person, and sometimes I have no idea who this person was. Now, here's where it really got interesting, because sometimes when I remember who this person was, I remember that they came in because they had like lupus. And I did the tests because I believed in those tests. They had lupus, I confirmed it, they had the antibody, et cetera. They had a certain SED rate, and then I told them what to do, and they did it. And then I retested them 6 months or a year later, and by God, they still had lupus. And maybe their SED rate was a little bit lower, and et cetera. And I thought to myself, this didn't do any good. I told them what to eat and what medicine, you know, homeopathic or whatever, and this and that didn't do any good at all. And then they write me and say, what you did changed my life. Everything was different after. That's an exaggeration, but something like that. That made me realize exactly what you were saying. Their experience of life was different. Their experience of how I feel and what my life is like, and even what I can do, and my relationships with myself and my family and my loved ones. I can go for walks. I can live a life and garden and do what I want. And I still have lupus, and that doesn't mean anything, because it turns out I end up finding that antibody tests are completely bogus. And there isn't such a thing really as lupus. It's an indistinct categorization of something that doesn't really even exist. And it taught me exactly what you're saying. How does it feel right now? How is your life? What are you feeling? What is your body saying? And I guess because of something, they connected like that, and then it was fine. And they still had lupus, according to the regular doctor. And all I could say at that point was, that's pseudo-epistemology. the lupus part. Don't do that anymore. It's even hexing you that you're somehow sick when your experience, like you say, is what does it feel like? What is it? Who are you now? How is this going? Oh, it's good. I'm getting stronger. We're good.
I just want to add one thing real quick, and this could be something for everybody right now, is I get so many people have come through like, oh, I work out, I'm an in shape person, I'm athletic, all this stuff, but I have all these problems. And now this is just one of the spectrum, but I got this. So I always ask, okay, you got this injury. Let me ask you a simple question. And this, you can all do this right now. Do you feel your feet underneath you? Do you feel all your toes connected to the ground? Can you move your big toe? Can you move the rest of your toes? Can you wiggle them? Can you lift them up? Can you push it this way? Can you do all that? Can you make that connection? And the amount of people who that is such a hard thing to do, they go, oh my gosh, I'm looking at my feet like that video where it's going like, I'm trying to lift these fingers knowing it's not my hand, but I can't, but these are actually your feet, and people are having a hard time connecting. And they're going, what is going on? And I will always say going, now you're actually putting attention to a place that is your foundation, and think you are so disconnected to your foundation and you don't know why you're getting injured, or you don't know why these symptoms are arising. And it's not just the feet, it's the hands, the whole system. Remember, it's the system in order, but it's understanding if, whether you look at it biblically or in the science version, if you have an electric pole, it needs to be grounded to create an electric impulse into the ground. If you look at it from a religious standpoint, the salt of the earth, having those feet connected, it's all the same thing. And if we don't have that connection, this is already where people are going to start going, all right, now I'm paying attention to self, my anchor into this world. And the last thing real quick is I tell every single person, this journey gets really tedious. Sometimes it gets hard. It's scary. It's nerve wracking. And I always tell people, when you connect with your feet to the ground, in that moment in time, that present moment, not a single being owns that ground that you are standing on but you. You're the only one who is standing in that point if you can connect to it and you can feel it. And if you can't do that, now's the time to start, because you're going to start to notice how much importance your being in your body, your foundation is to that place right then and there. So anyway.
Yeah, and that brings up the second revelation was I started to understand who I could help and who I couldn't. And it really came down to, whenever somebody would come to me as a doctor, I always said, so what's up? And that's, and often the person would say, well, I have heart disease. And I'd say, how do you feel? Well, the doctor said I have 70%, 80% blocked artery in my left coronary artery. And I'm wondering if Strophanthus can unblock my artery. I say, well, how do you feel? Well, I'm sick of these beta blockers. And well, so if you walk to the mailbox, how do you feel? Well, no, when somebody has heart disease, they can't walk very far. And I ended up thinking, if I could just get you to own, you know what, Tom, I'm tired. I don't feel good. Then we've got somewhere, because then I could say to them, all right, what we're going to do here is take this C plasma. We're going to eat this. We're going to not think about heart disease. That's like you're pseudo epistemologying here. That's all abstract. Just who are you right now? Next week they come, I can walk to the mailbox fire. Doesn't hurt. We're good. That was the revelation. Forget about that. The old biology is these diseases with their supposed mechanisms, all of which turns out to be nonsense. The reality is, I think it was Ram Dass, be here now, right? Just be here, own this. Don't be a victim. Just be here right now. You can do it. Adam, I'd love to hear your.
Yeah, no, I'd like to chime in here as well. I'll just say my personal experience when I had heard Pat was going to get involved before I met him, I was pretty excited. I knew the importance of movement and health. It's definitely one of those things. If you don't use it, you lose it. You stop moving. And I, understood a lot of importance of movement, but working with Pat over the last few weeks has been very impressive. And so I would encourage people to, whether you're bedbound or in a wheelchair, can't walk, you got severe pain, you're disabled, or you're, a top athlete, looking to optimize, I think Pat can be a huge value to everyone. And again, from my perspective, going into it, knowing quite a bit, still been very, very mind-boggling to work with Pat. So as far as the connectedness that you guys have all talked about, that's a huge part of it, is that we're disconnected from ourselves, from nature, from reality. And that's what we've seen in the last few years. People, when you're disconnected from reality, things don't go well. But especially, I think they start with the self. There's so many things that are vying for our attention, and we're so distracted if we allow it by news and social media and everything. But we really, like Pat said about being grounded, you really have to put your intention, and you have to take control of that. Where are you? And you can't let outside influences, especially if they're nefarious and intentionally want to take you to places you don't want to be, you can't allow them to impact you. So that comes back to what we were talking about. Tom brought up about sound. I think it's both. It's where you're at, and it starts with, hopefully, with a peace. And we talk about the heart and love. That's something that is the most powerful thing that we can emit from us and share with others, is truly caring about others, being compassionate, taking care of others. And then it's also making sure that we don't allow the influences that we don't want to allow to take a hold of us. Because if we're not careful, they'll control your thoughts, they'll control your emotions, they'll control your life. And so it's about reconnecting to yourself. And we've heard a lot about distancing in the last few years, and I think it's more about connection than distancing. There's nothing to be afraid of here.
Yeah. And, and so some of the details, like, Adam and I have been over Strophanthus and pretty much most of the, quote, medicines that we use, and we're working on learning more together about chlorine dioxide and the cell salts, wherever we think there's a connection with new biology principles, which is organize and make the water more pure and coherent, and then care about whatever the electromagnetic field is, that's sound, light, thoughts, etc., that's impacting us. That's what we're interested in, and in seeing how those things can impact your life. And, Adam and I are going to talk frequently, because I'm really interested in, so somebody came with this, and what happened, and, it's been my whole life, is what happens when we do this. And, I started thinking, if I just get this right, anybody can live, the life that they want. And then you just kind of fiddle with that your whole life. And even ask the question, what does it mean to have a life that you want, right? What is that about? It may not be the life that you thought you wanted, right? It may be something different than that. But those are the questions that I think are at the core of this initiative.
If I may add just one thing, Tom and Adam, one thing that has always been attracting to Tom's message, and why I'm also so eager to be a part of this, is the simplicity aspect in making, as we mentioned earlier, making this as simple as possible. Because as much as we're in a society where it's going to confuse you, and you hear words and phrases like, oh, this isn't rocket science, or, whatever people believe on that, or, oh, this isn't, oh, you're not a doctor, this is a little bit above your head. It's not supposed to be that way. Our senses are there in order for us to view and experience just how simple it is. And the answers are all around us. And what I want to do, at least on my end, and I know we've all spoken about this, is, at least from the training aspect, I want to be able to facilitate with Adam, with working with anyone who comes through, where it's getting to a point where it's going, I'm going to share this with you. You're going to get all the information, and you're going to be able to then share that with a loved one or family member who isn't maybe a part of the clinic, whether or not they choose to join. That's besides the point. I want this information, at least on my end, and it sounds all of us, to be obtainable in a way where people can process and say, hey, you know what? I'm noticing that same thing that I was taught, and this is how it helped me. And I can share that with someone. And you don't, again, you don't need a degree. You don't need to have the, 10 plus 20, 40 plus years of training in trying to figure out these pieces, because it's not about, you have to work with me because I have something. It's going, no, it's the knowledge that's within all of us. It's inherent. It's just trying to get back to it and reconnecting. So I just want to make it as simple as possible. Obviously, some things might be hard to grasp early on, but as we move and you experience it, and also obviously working with Adam, we'll be working together. It's going to be able to go, oh, light bulb, I got it. Makes sense. So.
Yeah, Adam, you were.
Yeah, no, I had a couple of different thoughts there, but maybe the time is probably getting
Yeah.
long here, and I think we could probably go on for hours or days. One last thought I'd like to share is that we talked about keeping it simple, but there are some really technical parts that we're going to bring in that are very advanced and very personalized, and that's the human story. There's all this testing you can do out there that's thousands and millions of dollars to do genetic testing that wows everyone, and it really leads to nothing because it's a bunch of nonsense. But the human story, listening to your story, Pat and I can listen to your story. That's where we connect, and that's what it all comes back to. And so it will be very personal. Pat and I are going to give everything we have here, along with support of Tom, and we hope that this grows, and we feel that there's a huge need for this. But we're really here just to provide everything we can to help in a truthful way. But we will be very, very much in that level, very personalized, listening to your story, working together, and doing everything we can to help you. So.
All right, there we go. That's the launch, officially launched. And there'll be all kinds of information. We're going to put out lots of videos and, how to learn about this, and we're going to how to learn about how to make bread eventually, hopefully soon, and lots of things. So stay tuned, join us. As I often say at the end of this, we can do this. We can do this, folks. So let's work together, create the world that we know we want. Thanks, Adam and Pat. And
thank you.
There you go. Thanks, everybody, and have a good week.
Thanks so much.
Thanks, guys.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Tom.
All right.